Hi viewers, my name is Anthony Aboki Okwa. I am a builder with about 40 years experience in the construction and real estate sector, teaching, construction contracting, and all sorts of businesses related to the construction industry. In the last few years, since the introduction of the new national housing policy, which stemmed from the huge shortfall in housing that has continued to grow with the rising population, the new national housing policy came up with a program for private sector driven housing delivery, and it gave birth to the Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria, of which I became one of the foundation members. At that time, I was head of the Department of Building at the University of Jos, as well as chairman of the Jos University Housing Cooperative Society, which was interested in providing staff housing. A few years into that, and the commencement of the new national housing policy with the Federal Mortgage Bank providing facilities for real estate developers, the challenge of meeting this demand, aside from the capital requirements, became very apparent. Despite our very large population, which is now nudging 200 million, we found that we had a severe shortage of workers. To bring it nearer home, in the last couple of days, I received a request for a developer who requires about 50 to 60 artisans for a particular project. We have not been able to get 10. That challenge cut across all the building trades: plumbing, masonry, carpentry, electrical. Now we have a situation where we have a shortfall of somewhere in the region of 20 million housing units, and it takes an average of 2 to 3 months, in the very minimum, if you build continuously, to put up a conventional house with a large complement of workers. And on average, each of these artisans will be engaged for 10 to 20 days on each of the projects. So for each housing project, a particular trade might be required to build maximum of 10 housing units. So when you take it from that level, the need for construction artisans is very huge. We need not less than 1 to 2 million artisans of various categories to drive our housing program. So looking at that, we took a look around, and as developers were emerging, we found that we needed to do something about the artisans. And we had encountered a very serious problem in the fact that there was no scheme available to produce the artisans that we need. The technical schools had virtually collapsed. The apprenticeship system wasn't working, and companies as well as individual developers had resorted to importing artisans from neighboring countries. The situation was not helped by the fact that everybody wanted to go into conventional school or look for white collar jobs or civil service jobs and the like. Banks and other establishments were the attraction, and the vocational trades were no longer attractive. The young people did not want to be seen as masons or carpenters whom they viewed as mere laborers with no qualification. You know, Nigeria, we have a major penchant for certificates, qualifications, and appearances. And so these people who worked with their hands, despite the skills that they brought to bear and the importance of their products to society, because without this category of workers, we cannot talk about any kind of development, because you need infrastructure, you need houses, you need schools, you need factories, you need machines, and all of these have to be put together by artisans. So despite their important contributions to the society, the fact that the society did not value their services, did not appreciate them, looked down on them, discouraged the youths. So we found ourselves in a situation where our artisans were aging, competence levels were dropping. In fact, one of the senior carpenters who had worked with me and who was now approaching 60 years old told me he had about 10 children. And the last thing he would want any of them to do was to become an artisan. That I found to be very telling, and we had to do something about it. At that time, we responded to, others were beginning to see the problems we were having, and we reached out to various organizations. The DFID, the World Bank was showing interest in the magnitude of the challenge, because here we were in a situation where industries were looking for workers and the youth were complaining of unemployment. There was need to do something about it. The National Board for Technical Education too realized that there was a need to establish a framework for certification of those who went through various programs to acquire relevant skills. So gradually a coalition, if I may use the word, built up as partners to drive a new national skills qualification framework. And we began to reach out to youths, and they started coming in trickles. More importantly, we also found that people who already had what were considered to be qualifications were becoming attracted to the artisan trades. We had graduates coming in who could not find jobs, coming in to train as plumbers, as tilers, as carpenters, as masons. But the bulk of those we still needed to attract, the school leavers, secondary school leavers, and the like, were still chasing JAMB admissions and the rest. So there was need to do something to sell the benefits, the potentials of artisanship, and to change that impression that these were not important people, their work was of no value, because it takes skills developed over the years, competencies developed over the years to be able to put together the products that make up a building. And the vocational trades are, expensive arts in a way. You can compare this to, if I may use the analogy, the various artistic professions, sports and so on that demand skills and that were beginning to get recognized across the globe because of the rewards they offer in terms of, the Olympics, the media awards that go to various categories of professionals. The musicians, P-Man for instance, brought the performing arts, gave it a lot of prominence, and events and activities like the Oscars, began to make what hitherto was looked down as the dregs of society, musicians, footballers and so on, were rising to become stars. And we felt that like is done elsewhere, we also should introduce something to challenge and encourage the youths to showcase their skills, to let the whole world know that we do have competent young people, that our youths are not lazy, they can produce and compete with the best. The artisans coming in from neighboring countries need not be the only ones that are recognized. And so the decision was taken to introduce the Construction Artisans Awards. Discussions were on for 4 or 5 years because we needed to build up acceptance. And luckily enough, the Federal Ministry of Education showed interest, the National Board for Technical Education, which had just gained acceptance or approval by the Federal Executive Council of the National Skills Qualification Framework, was interested as a means of encouraging artisans to register for the new qualification. Companies, the Real Estate Developers Association, the Council of Registered Builders, and other organizations came on board. Organizations like West African Ceramics, Hydraform, and the rest were showing interest. GIZ, DFID, and at a critical time, the British Council came up with the International Skills Partnership that linked us up with the Construction Industry Training Board of Northern Ireland, the Northern Ireland Skills Competition, the British, the UK Skills Competition, and we developed the strategy for the first Construction Artisans Awards, which took place at the Eagle Square between the 28th and 30th of January 2019. This was preceded by state competitions in about 20 states, all the zones, with a national committee comprising about 30 core professionals, including the National Board for Technical Education and the rectors of 6 polytechnics, one from each of the zones of the Federation. And the competition witnessed a total of about 3,000 participants. And eventually at the national final, which witnessed a very large turnout and also brought in the participation of a number of secondary schools across the FCT, and was also graced by the Vice President, Professor Oshimbanjo, who was ably represented by the Minister for Power, Works and Housing, Barrister Fashola, who himself, when he went around the trades, expressed his satisfaction about the activities and talked about the experience he acquired, the knowledge and skills he acquired in the various trades as a secondary school student back then, when the vocational trades, what we refer to as handwork, was still very prominent in various schools. And the interest we generated from that event has encouraged us to take it a step further. The Construction Artisans Awards is now being instituted as an annual event. The next edition of the national competition will take place in March 2020. But already activities are being kick-started across all the states. We have 36 coordinators for the various states and 6 zonal coordinators, and the competitions will start in earnest run between November 2019 and March 2020. This time we are hoping to attract at least 1,000 participants from each of the states. We've also extended it to be run as an expo of skills, because we recognize that the challenge we are facing is not just in the construction sector, but all those sectors where vocational skills, which are critical to any meaningful development, are still very relevant. Myself and some of my colleagues were opportune to attend the World Skills Competition in Kazan last month. And there, this competition is tagged as the Olympic of the vocational trades, which featured a competition amongst youths between the ages of 14 and 22 in about 300 skill areas in the world. Nigeria was represented only in an observer capacity, but other African countries are already there. And we are working towards a situation where we can actually take competitors to the next edition of the competition, which will take place in 2021. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.